Well, Edson, thanks so much for joining us. My name's Kutter.
I'm Jasmine, and welcome to In Real Life.
Thank you so
Uh,
much for having me.
yeah, we're super excited that you are able to take some time and one, share with us your new film, which I quite enjoyed. Enjoy might be the wrong word. It made me sloppy cry. Jasmine, is that what it's called? Messy cry.
I enjoyed it, but it's like, yes, it made my chest like convulse.
So yeah, but it was it was deeply moving, and I just wonder, it's interesting, and we can talk about why that is and how it affects different people, but I kind of want to know about the origin story of this because I'm thinking this is your first sort of feature length debut in terms of writing and directing, and it's a pretty bold move to go, you know what, for my first film, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a film about the meaning of life. So did you start there at this sort of like high concept level, or was it more like I have this kind of conceit, this idea where souls meet an interviewer and they desperately want to be living and he doesn't, or was it some other origin that isn't either of those? How did that original idea start?
The idea, it came from struggle. I think it wasn't anything about it was just came from like going through excuse me, difficult times. And I think when I don't know when you go through difficult times, it's easy to just lose perspective of things, and it's almost like there's this dark wall in front of you and you can't see anything else. So I think it was almost like the reminder of what if what I have now is super precious. What if and we always like try to project ourselves in goals or things that we are going to be enjoying life when this happened or that happened. And I think it wasn't that stage, and with all of the confusion and stuff going on, I just felt like, what if this is the goal? And I think I answered that question in the concept with the concept of the movie, like what if I'm so lucky and fortunate to be here, and maybe I think there are so many billions of chances for me not being here right now, and then I was just start imagining, what if there was this competition, or and I got here and I won that competition. It was like one of the biggest achievement of my existence. To that be here is already like an amazing achievement. So I think the concept itself came from that place.
It's interesting that you said like that dark wall, like the dark wall of pain, because one of the thoughts that I had that I shared with Cutter was that it almost felt like Will was living in this box that I thought of like a prison of pain, right? Like it was, and that it was just papered, like wallpapered with all of his trauma, and that's all he could see, right? And so then even when that light came in at first, he couldn't really appreciate it because he was just so consumed with his own pain.
Yeah, no, it's so lovely the way you describe it. It's pretty much like how I would describe like depression. I think that's still things still, great things are still gonna happen around you, but you can't see it. And I think it's pretty much that feeling that comes with depression, or that you don't need to be like a deep depression, but any sadness or thing that you kind of this big struggles that you go through in your life. So yeah, I appreciate you describing like that. So I think totally agree.
Yeah, I connected with it in very much along those lines. As someone who struggles with depression, I think that's one of the reasons why it affected me, and I didn't even realize it until afterwards of how enclosed that is. I described, to my psychologist and therapist that to me, my depression feels like my heart has a head cold, and what I try to mean by that is that it does feel sort of very claustrophobic and enclosed, and everything is sort of dulled from the inside out. And what you should be able to appreciate, you can't, and you can't even really help it. My question with that is, there's a risk, I would think, in storytelling in film, where you've got these really concrete experiences like depression, you've got trauma, things that people deal with, but you're doing this sort of kind of sci-fi-ish, very high concept conceit.
Yep. Yep.
And the hard thing there is that becomes very untethered from concrete concerns. How did you think about, on a storytelling level, taking such a kind of high level concept and rooting it in a way that didn't lose your audience?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kutter, because that was one of my biggest fears, you know, just showing everything that, you know, is so serious and it's so, you know, important for people to see in the most realistic way, but show in a way that it seems like, you know, a sci-fi movie, you know, or like this movie that's just like of things that don't exist. And and it was, I was pretty scared, you know, in a way. Like I think it was the thing that I was most scared of, like not making justice to these themes. But I felt like, you know, if people around me are, you know, understand where I come from, and I tried just to, okay, the clothes the movie is going to be wearing is going to be kind of fantastical. It's going to be like sci-fi and stuff. But what is inside is going to be pretty much made by people who somehow they've been there, and then I'm gonna, you know, film that in the most realistic way, but very like true to what it is. You know, I think one of the most important things for me when I'm, you know, watching a movie or making a movie is just like how true that is or look like, how human it is when compared to something that you see in everyday life, because we're so, our eyes are so trained to capture humanity that we know exactly when someone is not being real or that humanity is not true. So that was kind of what I was going for. And yeah, and if I got there or not, I think it's just it just the people who watch the movie and can say that. But that's what was my I was aiming for.
So even in capturing that humanity, right? Like you gave this a really specific timeline, right? This 9 days determine a whole fate. So what is it about 9 days?
Interesting. Yeah. This is like a, I knew 9 days would be, it's such an interesting number that has so many different meanings, you know, to different people. And in terms of, you know, it's for some people represent luck, and so some people means like life in terms of 9 months or things like that. And it was interesting because it came to me in a way like while I was writing, and you know, the dates and logistically and stuff, and came like somehow, okay, 9. I was thinking 7, and I was 7 and 9, and then after I was just went with it in a sense that it felt right, but I never want to go too deep in a way of finding the ultimate meaning to it. And I think somehow it was good because it was just like it came to me. I'm gonna put it down, and then people just whatever they want to give meaning, whatever meaning they want to give it to it, they can, you know. So it was nice that I could almost like detach to it from it, and then whatever they, you know, think of it, it's fine to me, you know. So
I like that. I think that reminds me of whether it's a song where the lyrics aren't as explicitly clear, or a work of modern art, right? It's up to interpretation. So
and I kind of like, you know, it's almost like Pollock when he just throws the paint, you know, to the, and it's not like specifically because of this or because that. Not I'm comparing myself to him because he's like his work, his body of work is just unbelievable, amazing. But I like this kind of, okay, there's a reason for that to happen, you know. I think, you know, there's some kind of, I don't know. Sometimes I think there's, you know, some not just coincidences there, it's there, you know. And but then it's not my job just to think of why I throw that, you know, number, you know, to the screen. So yeah,
that's really interesting because it maps well onto, I think, part of the conversation in the film of trying to explain or exhaustively explain certain parts of life. So why did this woman that Will is observing commit suicide? And there's no sort of logic that he can find, that he can grapple or grab hold of. because some things are inexplicable, right? Some parts of the beauty of life, the tragedy of life, are outside of that sort of rationalizing that we want to do. And that can be very frustrating. At the same time, it gives us Jackson Pollock and these other things, right? That we don't want to overly dictate what life means and how we understand it. I wonder if you could say a little bit about maybe some of those characters that came up. So one, both Jasmine and I really appreciated Tony Hale's character and some of the humor that he brought. So I wonder if, obviously he's the main point of levity. How did you think about that balance, right? It's a very heavy film, and he even says it, right? These are heavy things. How did you work with him directing and storytelling to make sure he balanced it without it becoming a sort of defense mechanism?
What do you mean by the defensive mechanism of Tony?
Yeah, either as a character or because sometimes you could say maybe the audience wants to laugh because something is too heavy, or you're just doing like a cheap and easy way out. This seemed like a pretty balanced way of injecting humor without it becoming a kind of an easy out for the audience.
Oh, good. Yeah. No, I think it was because even the script, I kind of imagined those scenes that, I want to somehow like mirror a bit like life, even in a sense that even when the most depressive moments are going on, you something funny happens, or in the opposite, when something is going so well and like something really, bad happens and just like, but so somehow they should coexist in a way that in your real life you just go through both at the same time or like one after the other. So it was interesting just talking to Tony. Tony is just like he's a genius in the sense that he can create levity around him like no matter what. So that's why it just looks so natural, and it's interesting that most of his the jokes he kind of created. I wrote some of them, but then I think it was interesting because it's almost like him reading the environment and what's going on and using comedy just to blend with that tension as well, and he was just able to just embrace so you could just see that wasn't just it was just not just one color, but it was like more than one color. I think Benedict Wong was able to do that too. So I think what's interesting is never, for me, what's important is never say like, oh, this is going to be a funny moment or anything like that. It's more like about pursuing like, as I said, like true moments. And there's comedy in truth. And so he was always like conscious about like his decisions. Like, oh yeah, at that moment, I would feel some anxiety, I would feel anxiety about being here. And there's this guy who's like, telling what I have to do. Am I going to, survive after this 9 days? So he would find comedy, but actually he was almost like just demonstrating his anxiety throughout the process. But we could just think it's funny because we're watching that from like a distance. But for him, it was kind of painful, But there's some truth to his character as like demonstrating that funny moment. So everything I think came from execution of moments of truth, and that's why I think they work well as being like, oh, okay, they don't feel cheap tricks. They just feel like part of the character and part of the story.
Talk to us about the very lovely Emma. Fantastic jazzy beats. So Kutter and I both felt like she was this perfect mix, right, of empathy and curiosity. Talk to us about how you directed her and created the character.
I think it's interesting because I think the biggest direction for her, and I know she just talks about it as well, and we talk, is just more about being present. So everything was about her, totally trying to be totally focused in what's going on right now. And it's interesting because it looks so simple, but I think this is like the most powerful skill someone can have, being here, being right now, being with you, because with this comes curiosity of discovery. This comes with the empathy, you know, I'm talking to you, to feel what you're feeling. And it comes with like not the goal but the moment, the now. It comes like with being thankful about what we're living. So it was kind of very simple, you know, concept and idea. And I think she explored in a way in all, you know, scenes and everything she was living. She just explored that simple concept, I guess.
Yeah, I thought that she played. I wrote that she was able to play in the moment, but I capitalized in the moment. She literally
Yeah,
embodied being in the
yeah,
moment, and it didn't seem. Of course, she makes it look easy, but
yeah,
still paying attention to the fact that technically that
yeah,
is incredibly difficult.
yeah,
Able to be so present. It was one
yeah,
of the best portrayals of
mhm,
being present in the moment that I
yeah.
feel like I've ever seen. She did such a beautiful job at that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because she kind of encapsulates what somehow humanity, you know, we when you think about goodness and in this sense, just what she does, she's the only candidate who doesn't is not thinking about just like how can I win here.
Mm.
She's the only one who sees Will as an interview. So I see a human being here, and I want to know what he went through. He's going through pain. Somehow I want to help him.
Yeah.
And even when she's not selected, she's really upset. But her final act is just like trying to save that person, you know, who just, you know, kind of kill her, you know, because she wouldn't select. And then yeah, so it's interesting how she was able to put other people in front of what her goals and everything.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an editing thing that happened or you cut it or and I went back and looked again, but you know, we use this phrase like you stared unflinchingly at reality or something like that. And her being in the moment, I think, is captured well when the first sort of interview test where he, you know, says you've got your son here and you have to kill him, and then he screams, you know, to each of the
Yeah.
souls, and in that moment she doesn't flinch.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
the only the only person in the room, the only person in the audience, she literally doesn't flinch.
yeah,
I thought, man, that takes a lot as
yeah,
as an actress, as a human to
human, yeah,
not
yeah,
do that.
yeah,
Um, I wonder if as you think about that of like, okay, she kind of represents this sort of curious human
hmm,
goodness in that sense. Um, I, as I look at this, it's this real interesting exploration of whether it's the pre-life or the post-life, life after life, etc. And you clearly have sort of visually some inspiration or some touch points in people like Terrence Malick, who I love his work, Tree of Life. There's some similarities like the I missed the beauty kind of a thing because of all the stuff I was doing. Are there, outside of sort of film inspiration, did you have any other sources or texts, maybe religious texts, spiritual texts, that you drew on as you were thinking through some of the dynamics of
yeah,
this reality?
100%. I think like even if you can read, there are so many thoughts of Jesus Christ in terms of what Emma does, you know, in a sense of even um, you know, she's not she even sacrificed herself for almost like for his salvation, which is a pretty I don't never want to put as like, you know, this is the interpretation, but of course there's like there's some you know similar behavior to that. So and she's the one able to, you know, to see it as a whole somehow, rather than just being there's this kind of a broader vision and understanding of what goes on, but also humanity as well. And because she's so, even in the final scene was interesting because I always saw her as this kind of almost like angelic angel who understands, so she wouldn't be able to feel, you know, the pain or anxiety, you know, the stuff. But then I think later drafts, and even when Zazie was playing it, no, she's still she's human, you know, she has the humanity in her, and so she of course she will, you know, feel pain. Of course she will be upset that she wasn't selected. Of course, she would be afraid of death, but and her decision was even more, remarkable, because even with all those fears, she was able to choose that path, somehow. And I think not that I want this movie to be, read as like, oh, this is a religious movie or anything. That's the same, I think, as Jesus Christ. He also, I think, he went through human emotions, fears, but his choice is this. So I think so.
Well, it's a great, I mean, I think it's a great point, because, you look at, you watch this movie and at first you think it's about the people, the pre-souls, or, pre-people who are interviewing. And then it turns out, actually, no, it's about will, right? And whatever you think of the afterlife, if there is one or whatever, at least, in the Christian tradition, a lot of people think of it as this sort of state you enter that you come fully arrived, right? There's no development, there's no nothing. And one of my favorite books is by C.S. Lewis. It's called The Great Divorce. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Oh, we're gonna even take a look at it.
Yeah, it's fascinating, because in a similar way, it's this kind of space where people are sort of shepherded through, maybe it's heaven and hell, we don't know. But what happens is, over time, as people develop their sensibilities, their practice, their embodiment in this space, it sort of, heaven or hell kind of retrospectively turns their experience in life into heaven or hell. And you see these two different paths of people either kind of closing in on themselves, or kind of opening up to reality in some really interesting ways. So it really, to me, resonated a lot with texts like that, where people are thinking through what would this reality look like. The interesting thing is, it's not a religious movie, of course, but for those who are religious, I find that C.S. Lewis, is sort of the patron saint of at least Protestant Christianity right now, and he's got a pretty imaginative, provocative vision of it, and it's a lot like yours, in the sense that you're inviting us to think differently about not just life, but life after life and life before life. So for that reason, I really appreciate it. I thought it was a really sort of creative, imaginative way of thinking about that.
I also felt like you gave us this space, or at least be this space, as a parent and as a marriage and family therapist, to really think of Will and his character as a parent, in a sense, right?
Yep.
I kept thinking about how you crafted his character kind of as an authoritarian parent, like these it felt like high rules and low love, right? Like there's so many rules that, that it could feel oppressive to his children, essentially.
Yeah. I think,
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think it's heartbreaking for him. It's interesting, because I come from a home where my parents are so loving, and so they always treat me with kindness and love, and I have like a very happy childhood, and in that sense also I know people who went through like tougher parents, and it's not like the parents were bad or good people, because it all came from love, because they want their kids to be prepared for the terrible world around them, and I think everything that he does comes from love, so and he wants to protect them, because since he's the only one who had that terrible experience in the real world, he wants to make sure none of them will have that same terrible experience, because for him there's no pain that was like worse than that. He never experienced anything that was, so he was like, I want to protect them from having the same pain they went through. So either I make them tougher and send them, or I don't send at all, and no existence would be better, would be less painful than just existing and going through that. So you all come from love.
And then he picks Cain at the end.
What?
The what?
Then he picks Cain.
Yeah. Yeah, he does.
Is that it?
Because it feels like this choice based on knowing who can survive, which is my toughest child, right?
Yeah.
There is this fear, right? And
yeah.
not uncommon, right, as a parent to feel afraid for what your child might experience.
And it's interesting because Kane, it's interesting because it's easy for us, and sometimes I even tend to just look Kane as like this douchebag or something like that. But I think I developed a better understanding with who Kane is, because I think he represents humanity somehow.
Mm-hmm.
He will mimic what he sees on the TVs. He's the only one who's just he sees it and says, okay, so from that, what the word gives me, I kind of gonna give back. So if you hit me, I'm gonna hit back. So it's interesting because I do believe if Kane he watching the TVs a word that was 100% kind, or a word that everyone is a good to one another, he would be kind too, I guess, because he's very intelligent, he's very 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 smart. He will adapt to whatever place he goes, but what he saw wasn't like that. So I think he's kind of represents, like, he's the mirror of humanity somehow, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting. As we think about, and maybe this is your answer to this question, but as we think about the movie as a whole, as we think about the timing of when it has released, right? That we're either coming out of this bizarro pandemic, or we're actually going back into it very depressingly in different areas. I wonder if you could say, just as you think of as a whole, and maybe just kind of a final thought here. Our series is called In Real Life, and so the question we like to ask everybody is basically, in real life, like now Kane's in the real world, right? In real life, what would you say is that kind of deeper spiritual conversation that your movie is inviting us to have?
I think it just see something in your life in a different perspective. I don't want to, as you said, like I don't want to. This movie, there's so many ambitious themes and meaning of life. I don't want any of those. I just want you to people watch it, and luckily they just gonna look at something in their lives and have a different perspective about it. Either love it more, or even like maybe seeing a different way, don't take for granted, or something that some pain they went through. And yeah, it can be very simple, just them to just watch it and somehow look at their lives, why they didn't do that, or something that in their lives, and just have a different reading of it. I think that would be.
That's wonderful. Well, we very much appreciate the time that you've spent with us.
No, thank you. No, it was lovely. It was great. I love these conversations, man. I have like conversations with like that with like my friends like all the time, and just like it's the best.
Well, I posted somewhere on one of the socials that there's something about that moment where a movie, or actually a line of dialogue, sees you in a way that you feel like you've never really truly been seen. And at the same time, you feel a lot of sort of maybe even shame, because now what you thought was unseen is exposed, right? For yourself, for others. And that's a really powerful and profound experience. For me, it came when Emma is talking to Will, and she's supposed to observe somebody, and she ends up observing him. And this line so like captured me. It was kind of crazy on the nose. She says, he hates himself. He thinks he's a failure, and that everything he does is worthless and shameful. And no doubt that he's experienced so much pain that he just wants to feel nothing. And the numbness makes him feel safe now. But I know that it's really just poisoning what's left of him. And deep inside, he knows it too.
Oh, thank you.
His response is, that man sounds irreparable, right? And then she says, he thinks so, but I think there's something left. What I took away from that is, whether it's in this life or the life to come, that none of us is irredeemable, right? None of us has moved 100%. To that point where we're irreparable.
100%.
And that just struck a chord with me, and is something that I'm going to take away.
And it's one of those lines I wrote to myself,
Oh, wow.
I wrote to myself. I wrote to, part of me who just was there, So it was, yeah, it's very interesting you saying that. So
Well, that's from our tradition. That's the psalmist says, has a line that says, "Deep calls to deep," and there's something about a depth of experience that, when you put it in artistic form, I think resonates with other people in their depths, and that, I think, is what happened in this film. So, Jasmine, you have any other last thoughts or takeaways before we wrap it up?
I'm right here with you on that. I kept feeling like that it's such a biblical message. And I know that's not, that's not the narrative necessarily that
not necessarily, but it can be, it's it's not like, because it's there, it's like the number 9, it is, and it's not, so it's just like it is, so you see it is
right. Yeah, the message that that we're all redeemable. There's no point that we can get to where there's not still space to be redeemed. So
100%. That was lovely talking to you. It was very, so it was good for the soul.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, and good luck on your film. We hope it, reopens theaters everywhere. We're really appreciative of it. So
cool. Thank you very much.
Good luck, and God bless.
Thank you. God bless you too. All right.